I did that because this episode is going to be fire.
Oh, really?
Geez.
There you go.
See, I got to start you off with that, Jason.
You right out of the gate.
Thank you for joining us for Season 2, Episode 1 of Song is Born podcast, where we turn conversations into songs. Our first guest for the year is my good friend Jason Swan, and we did a deep dive into the music industry, where it's been, where it is today, and where we think it's going. So first of all, I'm super glad to have you. It's been basically, all of last year I wanted to get you on here at some point, and things just didn't work out the way I'd hoped, but this is perfect. You were too close. You needed to move away first, and then you could.
This is a remote podcast, okay?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have a minimum
neighbor thing.
A minimum distance.
a minimum distance, a minimum radius before we accept you into the podcast.
Yeah, get your own territory.
Yeah. Well, and Caleb, but and Beth. Damn, that really didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, she sleeps in the same bed as you. God.
I actually sent her to a house across the town, just to do the podcast, and
Yeah.
But yeah, this is awesome. I mean, obviously it's Song is Born podcast, and the whole point is really about music at the heart. And I figured what better way to start it off, not only about talking a little bit about the state of the music industry today and where it's been and where it's going, but to bring you into the conversation and get out of all of the people I know, your knowledge of the music industry, you went to school for some of that too. And just music in general, you could go on and on about any freaking genre essentially with a handful. So we've been to a bunch of shows together. You've introduced me to a bunch of different bands and whatnot. So, this is just a great opportunity to have a discussion about what we all disagree on. So, because that's what the music industry is about, right?
I'm your guy. If you're looking for
very rarely do we agree on really anything, right? And when we
even
do,
if we do. Even if
you
we
find
do,
a way to
disagree with you. Yeah.
It's like, wait, let me change my mind on that.
Oh, 100%. Let me do all the research on the opposing view.
Can we just disagree to agree?
You too, Kyle? Really? I thought that was just Bo in this podcast.
Oh, man.
But, first and foremost, I'm no authority whatsoever on anything that's actually
do any of us
in the
have
music
authority?
Yeah,
I mean, come on now.
No, like I mentioned earlier, I don't have authority in my own house. I'm a guest in my own house. So yeah, no. But yes, I'm very interested in the inner workings of the music industry, where it's going, where it's been, all that fun stuff. Like it's fascinating to me. But hopefully I can bring a little bit of something.
Well, music is such a subjective thing that, to get expertise, you have to have knowledge of the history of it, So having the experience makes you the authority on it for something so subjective like art.
Yeah, I mean,
come on.
and sometimes music doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, most of the music I listen to does
times.
not make any sense at all.
Yeah, it's called Dream Theater.
No, it's called Grimes.
Yeah.
See, already starting the disagreement.
Here we go again.
I mean, yeah.
No, but seriously, I mean, we've been in it together in different states and talking about, Carrie, Kyle, myself, trying to, succeed in our own individual ways and collective ways in this ever expanding music industry that takes on a new form, it seems like, every year. Especially in the last few years, you've seen this massive transformation. Obviously, we had the transformation to streaming. That was probably the biggest, night and day thing after the introduction of, music downloads, MP3s, and so on, that just made it so ubiquitous for everyone to access every single song from different countries, whether it was big hit artists or just your, sub indie, self-producing musicians.
I could have uploaded a song and you could have downloaded it. Yeah.
And it just turns the entire industry on its face. And, that, might it interrupt a lot of individuals, or whether it's in the industry, musicians, or so on. But it also creates so much opportunity for people to, get their art out there. And now we're in this weird place where there is a lot of opportunity, but so is there for everyone else, and everyone can do those things. So how do you differentiate? How do you break free? And I don't think it's about being that next big band anymore. In a lot of cases, artists don't even want to be that, right? Because it has its own baggage and its own, can of worms. And in order to break through that glass ceiling, it takes so much money, time, and luck that, is it really worth pursuing that rather than, doing your own thing and finding your own space? I think I read something today regarding the, equation of like, instead of, getting that entire hotel franchise as a musician, you're focused instead on running that cottage industry or your cottages, because like you can curate and you can find your niche in more realistically, and also make your life better balanced that way than going for it all more
subgenre based.
Well, it's genre focused too, but just the perspective of how you tackle who you want to listen to your music, how you want to get your music out there, and then branching off from the music you create and all these different avenues that you can share, whether it's videos or maybe it's another brand that you're trying to bring into the market, or you're trying to change the industry in a way, or there's a tool set that you can adapt to the music industry. There's so many different avenues and ways that not only is there, but you almost have to tap into in order to break through in any small way in the industry from what I've seen in recent years.
Well, yeah, and you brought up a good point where how a lot of people aren't looking to be the biggest thing. It's because that doesn't really exist anymore because of the accessibility that everybody has. Like with Twitter and things like that, it's like I can reach out to my superhero musician star and they might actually respond. Think about, 20 plus years ago, it was like you had these icons, these whatever, because nobody knew anything about them. It was mysterious. It was whatever. Like you would read a Rolling Stone magazine, 3 weeks after something actually happened, and then you'd find out about it. Right. Now it's like, they were walking down the street. It's like, oh, okay, well, they're Joe Nobody, who cares? Or, they're never going to have that massive. Now they're going to sell a lot of albums. They're going to, sell out tours, stuff like that. But it's when deep down that they are just like you kind of thing, that whole mysterious rock star stuff just goes out the window. It's right. Like, okay. Yeah. No, I see their Twitter handle. I shot him a message. It's like writing fan mail, except they actually respond real time. If you say something offensive to them, or if you say something that they really like, whatever the case is, you might actually get a response from these people that used to be idolized, in the previous generations. And now it's like, okay, yeah, cool. I really like these guys. But you kind of group them in the same with everything else because of that accessibility. And it's like, all right, yeah. Where do we go from here? The bands that are not on social media, those were the ones from the previous generation, the ones that we all looked at. You're not reaching out to Eddie Vedder. You're not reaching out to the Stones. You're not, I don't know, I kind of grouped them together, but right. And with us, I think that it's kind of the same thing, with
you got to have that
Rolling Stones.
You got to have that connection in a way, almost a constant connection in some way to those musicians and create that relationship. But one thing I want to point out is I pulled up like the Billboard top 10 for different periods of time in the last 20 or so years. And well, no, I know this isn't about like this is kind of making my point though. So you see 2006, all of those artists, the Nickelbacks, the Chris Browns, Rascal Flatts. Then you move 10 years later, and it's basically none of those bands are in that list.
Okay.
right?
It's all
And
pop.
then you see that change happen, all pop
The
music.
advent of social media too, being like really prominent.
Right. But then you move to 2022, and look, you've got four bands that are almost spanning, they're spanning 7 years, still in the top 10 Billboard chart. So that shows you how entrenched and established these top, let's expand it to the top 100. I'm sure if you expanded this list even more, like how entrenched these bands get and how hard it is to penetrate if you're really looking to make it into that list. Like that's not going to happen. Like
Yeah,
you
you
have
guys
to
could write
have
the greatest album of all time, and it's not coming close to a Taylor Swift album in sales.
it's already
or
already
marketing
out
or
there, and we
anything like
don't
that.
none of
Yeah.
us know what it is. That's how much music there is in this in this world right now.
Yeah.
No one knows what it is because you have to find a way to find your niche, and being one of these guys is just not going to. I mean, Taylor Swift 1 to 2 in over 10 years, over 7 years. I mean, that's just insanity. I'm not surprised, but it's just wild to think that someone can, establish themselves for that long in such a competitive space.
I wonder though, how much of a correlation there is between the artists who quote unquote last or are entrenched, as you said, and between the artists who actually do more of the entrepreneurial shit to have their own production company. They do a lot of that stuff themselves, and they don't get signed. Like Taylor Swift, she's a business person, and she's a really successful one, and that's why
she's an independent artist now too.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So she's been in charge of her music career for a long time. But those bands who end up, getting that golden ticket and signing their careers away,
but
they don't end up lasting because it's like people make their money and they're on to the next, whale, so to speak.
I mean, but she was already established by that point and had the means to transition more easily than most would be able to, be self-starters and then do everything on their own. And then, that's a lot. We see how much work it is for us to do what we're doing. And, some have less skill and knowledge about the other aspects of it and still are able to kind of push through. And that's also, a testament to.
And on a smaller scale, you have bands like Spirit Box, which, Bo, you're familiar.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys are or not, but
Heavy.
They have their own label.
Holy Roller.
They have all of that stuff is them. And now they're out headlining, not Taylor Swift tours. They're not shutting down Ticketmaster or anything, but on that scale, in that niche that you guys were talking about, they have moved up into that upper echelon of headliner. You know what I mean? And so that's one of those that I look at, and I absolutely love the fact that they are the DIY stuff, where it's like, okay, we're going to do it all ourselves. We're not going to, but then if, I don't know, I'll pick a name like Hatebreed or somebody decides or Metal Blade Records says, hey, we want you to come on tour with, I don't know, name some Iron Maiden. And it's like, well, of course they're going to go on tour with Iron Maiden, because they're now seeing millions of people as opposed to the hundreds of thousands or thousands. And so, yes, it is awesome, but it's also like the music industry and business is not going anywhere. Like these guys are making billions of dollars a year doing basically the same thing that they've been doing since the 40s and 50s. Like they're ripping off artists for the most part. There are exceptions, obviously, but for the most part, it's a business deal. It has nothing to do with the appreciation for music and stuff. It's what do we want people to like, or what are they now with social media and stuff? What do they like? And we'll make more of that. Whereas before it was just force fed, like, here, this is what you're going to like. Now with YouTube and stuff like that, oh, this has 10 million likes. All right, we're going to sign this person. We're going to put more of that out, or similar sounding stuff to that. And they'll find a way to make money off of that. Again, there are exceptions. There are people like Taylor Swift who did that initially and then get to a certain standard where they can back out of that and go, okay, I want to own my own stuff now. Great. Awesome. I'm glad you did that. But to the DIY stuff, you have to have that niche following, that hardcore group that hopefully expands and expands. Because if you just try, like you said, if you just try to get out there and crack a top 10 of anything, there's no chance. You don't have the money, you don't have the backing, you don't have the marketing. It's not going to happen. You're not going to reach that many people. Like, it's similar in the podcast industry. Like, there's a new podcast starting right now with somebody else. You know what I mean? And right now. So it's one of those, like, when I feel like we may get to a point where there's going to be a podcast industry, not just like Apple or, excuse me, whoever it is that you guys use. Like, there's going to be labels and stuff where it's like, oh, we're on the so-and-so podcast label. And somebody's going to find a way to make money off of it. If it's popular enough, somebody's going to find a way to make money off of it. They're going to monetize it. They're going to have t-shirts. And it's not going to be a DIY anymore. It's going to be run by somebody else. Like, why don't you guys talk about this topic? Spend 8 minutes talking about this, and then we'll go to commercial. And then, it's like, all right, well, it was fun while it lasted. And now we're just trying to make money.
In your experience, would you say there's like a delineation between where a band starts off as, the latest or the newest and greatest thing to they take that shift into like, now it's just a brand that's marketed. It just turns into marketing at some point. Like, it doesn't matter about the albums, their songs, the album, the quality, the songwriting, everything tends to, like, for most people, it just kind of falls short.
Yeah. I mean, really any major band, in my opinion, that I don't want to say has peaked, but has gotten to the level of like a Foo Fighters or Metallica or something like that. Everything's going to be compared to their earlier stuff that you initially fell in love with. You know what I mean? So it's like everything's going to fall short of that. To me, there's no greater Pearl Jam album than 10. Guess what? They put that out as their first album. Like, I'm sorry. And it's not their fault that I compare everything to 10. And I'm like, nah, that falls short of 10. Yeah, it's good, but it's not what they used to do. But now at this point, like, bands are still putting out great music, but it's listen to it because it's on the radio. You wouldn't necessarily seek it out had you not fallen in love with that earlier stuff. Like, Bo and I collect vinyl. I don't know if you guys are into physical media at all, but it's like we try to make a decision, and I think Bo will agree, like, all right, this is something I want to physically own. Do I appreciate the new Metallica song that was just released? Yeah, I like it. It's kind of a throwback, a little thrash in there, stuff like that. I'm not going to rush out and buy the record. Like, it's Metallica at this point. Like, I don't know if that's making any sense. Where, like you said, it's more of it's not a marketing thing. It's more of well, they've already established themselves. They're already so massive. Like, Kiss has like 4 good songs to me, but their marketing career has been unreal, where, like, I don't own any, but I would love to have all the figurines and all the cool lunch boxes and stuff. Like, it gets to a point where it becomes more nostalgic than anything else. And it's like, yeah, I'll listen because I love that earlier stuff. And then they get so big that it's almost like Metallica is one of my favorite bands of all time. I don't own a Metallica shirt. Honestly, I'm selfish. I don't want to be seen walking around wearing a Metallica shirt because I care about what other people think about me. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's silly and it's stupid in my head, but I get in there and I'm like, nah, what if a real metalhead sees me wearing a Metallica shirt? Is he going to judge me based off the fact that I'm like, A, it doesn't matter, but B, it's also like, all right, it's Metallica. They've just been around in 5 separate decades. They've been here. So whether it's good, bad, and different, I'm going to listen, but I'm not going to physically buy anything at this point. But I mean, that's that. I love the Stranger Things thing, by the way. They brought in a whole new fucking group of people for them. That made me very happy with the Master of Puppets thing. That was great.
So
I want to races.
I don't know if I answered your question at all. I'm sorry, I got off on a tangent there. I apologize, but
Go ahead, Carrie.
continue.
Oh, I was just going to ask, I wanted to get your opinion on, I guess the breaking free like Taylor Swift has done. She now owns her music. She re-recorded everything to break herself free of all the ties, all the 360 deals, like the horrible record deals, losing money. She's now the queen of her own empire. Do you think that she's a trailblazer for artists to achieve something like that? And then also I wanted to get your take on, as hard as it is to break through the industry, to break free, it just seems impossible.
I was just going to say, and I think Bo may have touched on this earlier, she had gotten to a certain level where she was able to do that, which I think is phenomenal. Whether it's trailblazing or not, I'm not sure. I don't know of any artists that are that large. Maybe Prince probably owned all of his stuff, but yeah, that's the goal, right? Like the goal is I made the music, I get paid for it. I get it out there, whatever. Yeah. To me, that would be the ultimate goal. I'm not a musician myself, but it's like, yeah, I did this here. You can have it for a price. Obviously the music industry as a whole is that in between where, yeah, we can get it out to everybody and then we'll pay you a small percentage based off of that. But yeah, people like Taylor Swift, utmost respect for what they have done to get to the point to be able to basically buy themselves out of whatever record deals and stuff that they were in and own it. And really, like you said, re-record the masters, all that stuff where it's like, yeah, this is actually mine. I'm not paying a percentage to anybody else. I feel like that should be, if it's not, every musician's goal. Like, yes, this is my stuff. Obviously, people need help. That's what the music business is there for, the music industry as a whole. But breaking through and being able to do that, like those things are next to impossible unless you're I feel like 5 years from now, Adele will probably own her own rights if she doesn't already. You know what I mean? Like you have to be on that massive, especially if you're that big. A lot of the DIY stuff, in the hardcore genre or punk or, metal and stuff like that, these guys are on their laptops uploading stuff and maybe pressing a few records themselves. So yeah, they own all the rights to all that, which is awesome. And I love that and give me all of those records. But yeah, when you start getting into that millions and billions of, when all that money is being thrown around, it's like, I don't know, man. Like you either need somebody in your corner and you're taking 30% of, whatever you're actually making, or you need to be able to be so big that you can just basically buy it back and buy out of it. But yeah, the vast majority of everyone else is right in that music industry thing where it's like, all right, we're going to keep doing the same thing for the last 70 years. And now with Spotify and, Apple Music and things like that, where it's like pennies on the dollar per stream. And it's like, okay, well, that's why I'm such a big advocate for A, going to shows, and B, physical media and merch, like shirts, records, tapes, if they put out CDs, whatever the case is. Most of that is going to the artist in the subgenre world. You know what I mean? In a lot of the DIY stuff, they paid out of pocket to put it out. You're giving them back at a small markup. You streaming them all day long on Spotify, yeah, boost their numbers up, and they can't afford lunch because they don't get paid anything on that stuff. So, but it's difficult to answer your question to break out of that cycle of where we've been since 1948. Like it's rich white guys.
Well, there's a big paradigm shift in the music industry that I think is inevitable, and a lot of that is independent artists, having access to the audience on the internet, which is infinite. I mean, anybody can find their audience. It just takes a lot of luck, a lot of consistency, and putting out a good product that people will enjoy. But
content.
I've seen a huge shift in the comedy industry. every comedian has a podcast now. Every comedian is funding their own special and then selling it to a Netflix or just putting it on YouTube and getting 5 to 6 million views, and it just rocket launches their careers. And they're doing it all without anybody signing a pen to their name and taking
Yes, but
ownership
are they
of their
making
stuff.
money doing that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
They're probably
Absolutely.
making
Like
more
YouTube
money.
ads and stuff like that.
Well, no. So they're
I'm
probably not
curious.
making money on the videos, but
But
you
when
know,
they sell it to
when a Shane Gillis
Netflix
goes
or
on a
something.
Joe Rogan, and then he goes on, another podcast. They have this whole network now where they promote each other, and rising tide lifts all boats. Like they're all getting, a huge audience, just from them doing everything outside of their industry.
I mean,
do you think that'll get saturated because everybody's doing that now? Like, I mean, obviously it's already very saturated in the music side, podcast side, everybody promoting each other. But when everybody's promoting each other, then that ocean gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that tide goes. It's like, okay, well, where do you differentiate now? Who's the standout?
So that's
Is
the
it
thing,
too
though. It
much?
also elevates their skill set too. So it pushes their craft to a whole nother direction. And you look at comedy 30, 40 years ago and how it is now. I mean, it's gone in so many different directions, and it's everything is unique to them. And that's the thing
for sure.
with comedy and for music. As long as you're making something unique to you and telling your story, it's always going to be unique. Whether or not it's saturated, I can't attest to that. But I mean, there's no such thing as a lack of audience. Everybody's audience is out there. You just got to reach them.
Agreed.
And I think that there's parallels to draw, especially from the comedy space over the years. So, like, it was more in person, obviously, in the 80s, 90s, you had to go to basically a specific city, New York City or so on. And then the network was the established comedians in that space. And then they would be the ones to vet, okay, this is a newcomer. He needs to work up and keep doing the shows and get to that level where, okay, now I'm going to promote him and get him on as my opener or whatnot. But they'd create like this network or almost like a family of comedians and so on. And now, and correct me if I'm off base from what you were saying, Carrie, but now we have the internet and we have social media. And while we can also tap into our audience, we can also tap into the network of the other, whether it's indie artists, new upcoming comedians versus established comedians that maybe came up a few years earlier, and they can kind of network with each other and kind of cross share in a way, while also acknowledging, the competency of each other. So you're not going to necessarily elevate someone that you think is terrible, but you also want to build up their competency and level of bringing on new audiences, and also cross sharing those audiences too. You see that with things like Twitch, where video game streamers will pull in audiences from other video game streamers and they'll cross share that way. So like the social media dynamic works in so many different directions that, I mean, I think it creates that growth without having to tap into some sort of, pay to play medium in a way. And then eventually you build your audience up enough that you can get that independent label or deal or Netflix special to start off like that. That's how I see it growing in the industry today. And it's drawing those same, relationship parallels to prior to the internet space, just on a bigger scale, but a lot more players.
So what do you think now is the difference between the ones that actually succeed and the ones that have that great idea? I mean, it's got to be follow through and grind. Right? Yeah, I was going to say, it's got to be grind. It's got to be follow through.
Put yourself in uncomfortable spaces. Like, you got to keep doing that.
Yeah, because there are so many people. I myself have all these wonderful ideas. I don't follow through with shit. Nothing. You're lucky that I answered the phone today because I've got things going on. I start a million things, don't finish any of them. But the people that are rising in that care, and I think that goes back to that the more people do it, the more, the rising of the tide and the bigger ocean and all that. The people that are keeping their head above water are the ones that are constantly grinding. They're doing
and
it.
evolving.
More content. Yeah. Going with the changes, going with this. Like, oh, this one thing happened, so I'm going to bail out. It's like, okay, there's going to be a billion things that are going to happen and stuff.
Well,
and you may just get bored at one point.
A lot of that kind of behavior has to do a lot of the evolution of the music industry now that it's on this new internet space and social media, is that the algorithms are driving the behavior of musicians. So like you say, like content. Bands never used to really do that. They would do tours and they would release albums, but there wasn't like constant daily like things coming out. But now like you almost have to do that. You have to make your hobby a full-time job to hit those algorithms, to release all that content, to get the views, to get the monetization. So it's forcing the music industry and right. Yeah. It becomes this huge job if you want to do it independently. You are in control of everything, but there's a lot more work involved. You can't just focus on the music. You have to focus on everything.
Now, do you think that, to that point, do you think that kind of works against, or a lot of the comments I've heard in the last few years is, oh, they don't do music or they don't make music like they used to, and so on. And a lot of that is true. There's a lot of great, right? I do too. And part of that is we can go back to the radio and things like that, which is specifically curated stuff for the masses. But do you think that there is also a little bit of a double-edged sword with the quantity versus quality aspect in today's music? Because it's overwhelming, and there's a lot of people putting out a lot of stuff.
I was going to say, that's why it took me a minute. I mean, there's so much that I don't know, that you don't know, that none of us have even remotely heard of, that is probably massively popular somewhere. Like shit, the top 10 list. I haven't heard any of those albums. It's massively pop. But again, is that because it's being force fed like the old radio style where there was only a handful of, new singles that were put out, and this, is it because of that, or is it because they're actually really good and I just haven't listened because I'm jaded, being force fed, the stuff from 10 years ago? I don't listen to anything now that's in the top 10 or whatever because I'm so tired of whatever was forced. Like, I don't know. They could have been literally the top 10 albums that were put out this year could have been on that list. And I honestly don't know because I'm jaded, because there's so much stuff now that, again, I think you mentioned, you were like, what did you say? Is it because there's too much stuff? And now,
well, do you think we're overloading ourselves, or the industry as a whole, with more, and the quality either gets lost or degraded because the focus is so spread thin, whether it's on an individual group or individual itself, or just looking at the industry as a whole? And
question.
And I don't think that there's any one answer for that, but I do think that the trend in at least from a personal space and what I've heard from others is finding more new music, not through their traditional channels like radio and so on, but more curated playlists catered to your eclectic tastes, whatever that is. And I think you've seen that with a lot of like Spotify playlist curators and stuff like those have gotten a little bit more popular. And then now like Apple Music is really kicking it up a notch. I've noticed with their like personalized radio stations for,
they really have,
things like that. I think you're going to start to see more and more people seek. I think that's where we see more growth in not only the, capturing those new artists and indie artists and so on, but more of people enjoying the new stuff that they're listening to and not being force fed it.
I'll go even to the extent that like I found bands from 15 years ago that I didn't know existed from those playlists and stuff. And I was like, wow, this sounds incredible.
Yep.
This came out in 2005. Like, of course I like it, but yeah, I mean, and so I'll go and I'll search for their physical media and see if like their label or themselves are still have anything. And I'll try to buy all that. Like, yeah, those things I'm a huge fan of.
Bring up a point about the curated Spotify playlists. I believe Carrie and Bo and I we were talking about at one point trying to get our Silter music on some Spotify playlists, and I don't quite remember. So I have a question in this: is there a way to like pay to get on those curated playlists? So then my question would be, if you can pay to get on those playlists, and how are they any different than the radio? In fact, wouldn't they be more incentivizing because there's no ads?
So yes, I agree with that, and I'm not necessarily saying that's where the best of that industry or that approach is coming from. I think it's the big platforms that are offering those services for free that is really where the value is.
Okay.
Or you're already subscribing to something and they're just catering it based on your needs. Mm-hmm. I think what we ended up not figuring out, but essentially being weary of is that a lot of those playlists are scams. For artists to pay into and saying, oh, I'm going to get you so many subscribers and followers and so on.
And they're fake
really
accounts.
it's just bots that, they might bot accounts that they'll get you, get you to, or get subscribed to your band, your album, whatever it is. So it's hard to weed through which ones are going to be effective. And, something like Twitter was just overwhelmed with people saying, oh, give me your new music. What's your fresh tracks? I'm gonna promote it. There's so many promoters out there that claim that they're going to push your music, bring it to the right curated playlists, and make sure you get in front of the right listeners.
Carrie and I have seen that since 2005, 4, when we first started really playing out a lot. Everybody and their brother is just like, this dude with a camera is just like, oh, I'll take all your pictures and only charge you 20% of your shows and all this stuff. It's like everybody's like that angel that's swooping down to save you and make your career, Well,
at least you could put a face to that. At least
that's
back
true.
in 2005.
You can
now
look them in the eyes and call them honest bullshit.
Created an algorithm. It's like, that's a
give me your references.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift. I worked with Taylor Swift.
Mm-hmm. One more thing I wanted to bring up is the dynamic of, we're seeing all these live music ticket prices just skyrocketing.
Yeah.
Any band that someone that your neighbor might know is like just insane to go see them live. So what's the fallout for that in terms of the indie artists? How does that create like the opportunity for them on a more local scene for people to go, okay, I need to experience live music.
The $20 ticket price.
$500 to go see. Yeah, exactly. That's there's the opening. There's the opportunity for those indie artists to get out there. And we just, I feel like there's just a lack of places in some respect that are opening their doors for those kinds of opportunities for indie artists.
Well,
I think like most things these days, you call them out. You hold people accountable for, doing shitty business. And I think Taylor Swift was another trailblazer in this instance where she spoke out against Live Nation, one of the largest or the largest promotion company they put on all the big concerts.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam are sitting back going, we fucking told you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now, Bo,
it's a rigged system.
Oh, of course. And Bo, what do you mean about lack of places that are willing? Are you talking about like major venues? Because indie artists and stuff like that are not going to sell out amply.
No, I'm not saying about those large scale venues. I'm talking about more.
It's almost like middle income is kind of like completely gone away. It's like low income and high income. Like there's the shitty dive bar, and then there's the big band venue that the professionals play at. The in between is completely gone now.
And I guess it certainly depends on the city, the location of where you're at, and how established they are for offering those kinds of venues.
That's always been the case, though. Like any touring band throughout the United States goes, and they like sometimes they'll sell out the small.
I'm not saying that it
shitty
hasn't.
venue and
I'm not saying that it hasn't been, but I'm saying that, now that the prices are just skyrocketing to, just obscene levels where people are literally choosing not to go see their artists, even though they really want to.
Well, not
because
even
it's
choosing, they can't.
They can't,
trying.
right. Well,
they're taking out second mortgages and still not getting tickets.
Exactly.
Like,
it's even worse if they can and choose not to.
Yeah.
It's worse. True. Right? It's not saying I can't afford to. It's saying I can afford to, but screw that. I'm not doing that.
The value is not there.
It ain't worth it.
Right. And going back to what Bo said, the fallout for these more independent or smaller bands and artists should be, in theory, yeah, I'll go see them instead because that's more reasonable. But the problem that Carrie mentioned is that there aren't as many places that are hosting bands like that.
That's what I'm getting at.
That falls on us as the consumer.
And basically what I'm saying, Jason, is that you need to open up your own venue.
Yeah, here in good old Homosassa.
Yes,
where
please.
Everybody's gonna drive to,
open it up in Ottawa.
There you go. Yeah.
All right, let's go in between. Let's find a state in between. And
Gatlinburg.
Yeah.
Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
It's all bluegrass, only bluegrass.
Hey, that's fine. That's how CBGB started. Come on.
Yeah, Tennessee needs more musicians.
They need the music industry to encroach upon them.
Yeah.
We'll really break into that scene in Tennessee that nobody is currently in whatsoever.
Untapped potential.
Yes. Meanwhile, let's drill for oil in North Dakota where nobody's thought about doing that. Like,
Yeah.
So
anyway.
What do you guys want to see in 2023 through 2030? What are the things that you want to see in for artists, for music as a whole? Like, where do you want to see it go?
For me,
God, that's a good question.
What we're doing is something I've always wanted. I feel like there's a marketplace for it. There's just not a lot of people doing it, but I would love to sit down and watch a band come up with the concept of a song. You get to witness the moment of inception, and we've not only done that, but we've been documented and released an entire album all last year, and we're attempting to do it again this year. So I think a band having a podcast, they're talking while they're riding on the tour bus. They're talking about their new albums and come up with ideas, and you get to hear those processes as they build out, and then as they're in the studio, just keep your audience along for the ride the whole way. And then also having more independence for those bands. Like, the whole NFT fab was kind of a joke, but it needs to happen in the audio world. We have DNA for songs. If you play a commercial song on your YouTube video, it's going to get demonetized immediately. If we're perfectly at a state where musicians can own their music and get paid every time that song's played. It's just a matter of time before you just get enough people to just, rise to the top and just skip the middleman, just like the venues, the middleman's gone. It's either the small dive bar or the big, rock venue. I think we need to do that with the industry too. I think the artists need to take more control over their music, have the rights to their music, and also, a producer nowadays, you have to be a songwriter, you have to be a guitar player, a drummer. You just got to assume more talent. And it also rids the industry of the people that don't write music. They just sing, or they just have a nice juicy butt, and they can sell a ton of records because they're hot and everybody wants to.
Yeah, but they've been at the top of the charts since day one. The ones that have had songs written for them, and
yeah, but for how long?
Face and they get.
Yeah, but
right.
yeah, like Kyle said, it's a dime a dozen. They're fast to rise and they're fast to fall.
And there's to your point about documenting that process. There's a reason why the Sonic Highways Foo Fighters documentary is so popular and well rated. Yet the album, I would, aside from you guys, I would ask anyone to name one song off of that album, and I'm betting there would be one maybe that someone could name. It's not a popular record, but it's one of the best documentaries and process to that whole, building that song, going to that location, being in that space. Like what's going through their mind when they're writing that song. Like all of that is definitely resonating with what we're trying to do here, I think. And that's
I mean, you can go a step farther. And I feel like Bo and I obviously have had many conversations about the podcast and stuff like that, being neighbors for the last 2+ years. But what I wanted to see, and what I hope that more bands and more podcasts, more whatever ends up doing, is not only what you talked about, Carrie, the step by step and this, but like get into the gear. Like, yeah, I'm using this product because I used this other one before, and and I tune a certain way, and because now you're bringing in the gearheads, now you're bringing in the uber nerds, no offense, obviously, speaking to you guys, because it's a great thing. Then you're bringing in a whole different group of people, like the tech side of everything, what platforms you use and why, and what, not necessarily the streaming device, but like what equipment you're using. And again, like with Bo, like your drum setup, Kyle, how do you remotely, use your bass and your backup vocals and how you brought in those strings and stuff like that. Like, I want to see that process as opposed to, oh, that's really cool that he did that. Like, there's the outcome. Yeah, the outcome is great. I want to see all of it. I'm not necessarily the songwriting, because the songwriting is a very personal thing where it's like, you can only talk about what you're going to write about so much, Carrie,
Yeah,
it's right. I'm sure it goes through your head where it's like, oh, this is what I was thinking about, and then I wrote this down. It's like, okay, like, yeah, that's a personal thing. That's you figure that out. But I used this microphone at this distance because I got a better, less feedback when I did this, and blah blah blah. Like, not every step. You're not running a 24-hour service, but when you start breaking down things like that, where, you can combine it into an hour-long video or half-hour video, whatever the case is, of the technical aspect of things, like the gear and why you did that and stuff like that. Not just promoting like, oh, I used this guitar. Like, no, I used this and I toned it to this thing, and I used these chords because I felt that those chords went with whatever the case is. Like, I'm, as a fan, now going, oh shit, now I can equate that to other albums that I've heard before and gone like, wow, I wonder what they used for that. And I'll do research on that and watch documentaries and watch, whatever the case is, about the process and what you're physically using. You know what I mean? Because it's one thing to just go like, oh, we had this great idea and we had this really good conversation, and then we wrote a song, and here's the song, which is awesome. I want to see Bo on his fucking hands and knees tweaking his, thing, going like, well, I wasn't getting that snare kick that I really wanted, so this is the level that I'm going to go with, and I use this Pro Tools or whatever it is that you use to get that certain level because it happens to go really well with this vibe of this song. I feel that is way above my pay grade, and I would love to see stuff like that.
I feel like with today, like with people being on YouTube and all these bands, like people used to be used to hearing from their favorite bands once every year or two or 18 months. Right.
Oh,
but now people want to hear from their favorite creator of whatever type of video, whatever media it might be. They want to hear from them like often. Right. And so now it's like no band can create an album every week. Right. Who can do that? But what they can do is create that album and then just document it and share that in real time. And so I think our viewers expect more out of us. And then Bo, Carrie, and I we've been talking like, how can we provide more in between? Because there's like a lot of like just silence between our episodes, and we feel that our episodes are good, but we want to do more content. We enjoy it. We love all the media part of it. Like that's what we want to do is we want to do video. We want to do audio and music, and we want to reach all of that audience. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
They expect all of it. They
Nobody's
expect
fucking
more out
attention
of us.
span is longer than a minute and a half at this point. So yeah, like the in-betweens can all be, not to promote TikTok, I don't have it or anything, but something like that where it's like, yeah, here's 35 seconds, a minute of what I did to prepare for blah, 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 fill in the blank, whatever you want to do. But A, content is king, but B, you're actually being, you're giving people information. You're like, if I need to reference something, I can go back and go, how did he get that sound? I don't play an instrument, but if another musician had, happened to be watching, be like, wow, I really like that sound from that third podcast that they did. How do I find that? Oh yeah, they have it laid out for me how they actually went about doing it, as opposed to here's this and then here's the final product, which is awesome. Again, give me all the dirty shit. Give me the fuck ups. Give me the, all right, well, this sounded like shit. So how do we fix that? Because
also
plenty
a lot of
musicians sound like shit.
A lot of your viewers and your
it.
listeners today are now creators. So they're not just reaching out looking for new music to listen to when they're working. They're looking for not just good music, but also like, how are they doing it? Like I'm trying to do
Instructional.
that.
That's what we all do.
Right? Everyone's a creator now. Everybody, I was actually, I kind of had this little stand-up bit that I hadn't really put together yet, but it was something along the lines of like, everybody on the internet is a fucking ad. No matter how you look at it, everyone, like, even if it's just a little selfie video, it's like, hey, it's so-and-so here, Twitter handle this or that. It's like everybody's promoting themselves, even if they're just a regular person who runs a forklift and they just put videos on YouTube or something. Who knows? But everyone's a promotion.
Well, it's the same thing as standing on a street corner handing out a flyer to everybody going, come see me tomorrow night. I'm doing the free stand-up, whatever at 2:00 in the morning, blah, 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 like just handing out flyers. It's the same concept. You're just reaching a hell of a lot more people now.
And it's harder to get their attention. On the street, you can step in front of the person and stop them and be like, hey, take this flyer, and make them read it. But on the internet, you have to capture their attention in a millisecond.
Spit in the face and have it run away in front of you. But
wait, has that happened to you? Are you a victim?
I've promoted bands before. I've done the flyers and stuff like that. I've never actually been spit in the face. I actually don't need glasses. That was to shield the spit from going in my eyes. But no, I mean, but it's the same concept, but on a much larger scale. Where. So you're absolutely right. So the whole DIY thing, everybody has this nostalgic, like, well, back in, New York hardcore in the 80s and blah, 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 man, we really did it ourselves. And it's like, yeah, well, people are fucking doing it themselves now. They're just able to reach billions of people at a time. No, whether or not billions of people are seeing it, that's one thing, but they have the ability to reach billions of people at a time. When you're in a confined area, like, I mean, think about grunge. That was in one of the most remote areas of the United States. It's like, yeah, it was shit all the time. They were in underground shit because it was rainy and cold and snowing, whatever. So they formed grunge, which only lasted about 4 or 5 years, but it's still relevant today because of that. And that, hey, that DIY, whatever, like, yeah, they were all forced right there. New York hardcore, surfer stuff with the, surfer rock. Like we talked about this the other day, Bo. Like where it's like, yeah, that was California. It's like, all right,
like
if
the
you're
Beach
on
Boys
Long
type
Beach
stuff
or whatever. Yeah, like that was it. Yeah,
that guitar sound, man, that made it.
No, it was incredible. But it's also like now, if the Beach Boys came out now, like, you'd be like, okay, like.
It would be like satirical,
Yeah, but like the hippie movement, all that, like, okay, it was because you had that like-minded whatever, but it was right there. Everybody was right there. It was one thing. And now everything is everywhere all the time. How do you differentiate somebody else who starts a podcast that, I don't know, sits down for a half an hour and then creates a song? Like, there's no, like, it's tough. It's really fucking tough. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of tough, how do we turn this into a song?
Jesus Christ. I forgot that you guys actually do a song at the end of these things.
Yeah, me too.
Well, we didn't talk about specific genres or anything like that.
What's your go-to? What's
Oh
your
God,
Pearl Jam? Is that not what you said? That's like
no. I love me some Pearl Jam. I love 10, but I feel like that's way too in your wheelhouse to give you a Pearl
Fair
Jam. Yeah, you guys are so on point with that that's not fair at all.
He also said Holy Roller. Or I mean Spirit Box.
This is true. I did mention Spirit Box. With the DIY approach, we talked a lot about that. If you want to throw in some Taylor Swift, that's good too.
Wow.
She's not dominating everything at this point. She might as well dominate the podcasts that create their own songs.
Taylor Swift and Spirit Box. Ah, fuck you, man.
Well, they're pretty much the same thing, aren't they?
kidding.
I mean,
You can bet your ass I'm getting Natalie. My daughter can scream.
there you go.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. I'm fully on board.
Hey, look. Spirit Box isn't my favorite by any stretch, but I'm fully on board with your daughter screaming in a song. By all means, it's about passion. If it's passionate, I love it. If it's country, I probably love it a little less, but if it's passionate country, I'm good with it. You know what I mean? Like emo or hardcore or metal, or as long as you're fucking passionate about it and you're showing that emotion, and your daughter screaming over any, version of any song, like, I'm totally fine with that, because you can't scream without being passionate.
Yeah, he sent me some pretty terrible stuff, but it was passionate. He loved it.
But that's all I own, though. It's terrible stuff that's passionate.
but it's so physical.
Yeah, it's physical media that is terrible. Nobody else has to listen to it or like it. I don't give a fuck. Like, I bring it over to Cody's house, and I'm like, here, you'll probably like this. And he's like,
it's like back in your flyer days. Here, you throw this away.
Yeah, no, this isn't my trash. It's your trash now. Please.
At least you hit it out with passion.
Yeah.
They were always flyers that said "Save the Environment," which always threw me off. I was like, wait a second, I'm giving somebody something that never mind.
I used to give people plastic flyers.
Yeah, it was a stupid joke about waste, and anyway.
You just give everybody plastic flyers. That way they are a piece of shit if they throw it away.
I pressed them all to vinyl. They had to actually play the record to hear what the message was. They were like, I'm good, thank you.
Anyways, I think we're probably time to wrap this one up, and
we can wind down.
So our genre is music.
Pretty much.
All right. Let's
Man,
do
this was an awesome conversation, though. I really enjoyed this, and
thank you, Jason.
I mean, these are phenomenal questions. I mean, I wish I was more well versed in actual responses as opposed to just my opinion on things. But that was fantastic.
Well, you can keep coming back as a regular, and we'll call it a fellowship for the education.
But a man with Freddie Mercury on the shoulders of Darth Vader, I'll take his opinion any day.
That's right.
This is the only opinion that matters right here.
That's right.
Yes.
You forgot that he's wearing a Flash shirt, a Flash Gordon shirt.
Oh,
Come
yeah,
on.
true. Yeah.
amazing.
Quarterback
There's
of
a
the
lot
New
in that.
York Jets. Flash Gordon.
Hey, man.
Cool.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time, and we'll see what we can do with the song. So,
Guys, thank you. Appreciate
all
it.
right.
Have a go, man. Good to see you again.
What led me to biting the hand that just fed me? Selling my soul when I was 20. You knew damn well I wasn't ready.
Succession will now and forever be the lesson, 'cause I will no longer be your possession.
Divide and we stand, it's out of your hand.
I'm setting free my profession. Peasants wanna rise, and now we're standing tall. You try to keep us down, forever feeling small. You're not the ball and chain, you're just the obstacle. Don't act so fucking surprised, we're tired to start to fall. I'm taking back what belongs to me. Why you bathe in the glory? Your generous offer is decline. So listen to me now, this will be the last. For the price of my dignity, so I called up the cavalry. Your generous offer is decline. Listen to me now, this will be the last time. Relentless, I'm finally coming to my senses. Just knowing how long I've been defenseless.
We're now at the end, so let us begin.
You still think it's endless. You really see potential in your bank account, yet you're surprised that we're fighting to make it out. Yeah, you're not the ball and chain, you're just the obstacle. Don't act so fucking surprised, we're tired to start to fall. I'm taking back what belongs to me. Why you bathe in the glory? Your generous offer is decline. So listen to me now, this will be the last. For the price of my dignity, so I called up the cavalry. Your generous offer is decline. Listen to me now, this will be the last time. Price on my dignity, so